All right, so welcome to part two of this series where we are going to set up the processor. Uh, right now you should have your source set up and it should be checking to see if new requests have come in. As you can see here, the source is trying to find new records to process. For now, I'm just going to put this on stop this, and we are going to go into this processor source code here, and this is where we're going to be making our changes. Before we start on that, what I want to do just to make things easier, go into the source demo and find the resources application YAML. Let's just copy everything from here and then put it inside of the processor demo. So source main resources, we can delete this and then we can rename this to a YAML, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste it in. So I'm going to remove that Pokemon processor demo, and the port we're going to do 9003. The database is going to be named processed Pokemon database. We're going to leave everything the same except for this part we are going to change. I'm going to delete this for now. We'll come back to it later. Comment that out for now. And let's make sure everything looks good. The next thing we need to do is we need to set up this database. So I'm going to copy this process Pokemon DB, go into our Postgres, click on this database, right click on it, create, and we're going to call it process Pokemon DB, owner Postgres. Go ahead and save that. Okay. Now what I want to do is just close the other tab so we just have this one open. And I'm going to minimize this. Let's go into our main Java processor demo application. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a run to make sure we got it set up correctly. All right, so it looks like it started up and we're good to start working. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. First thing we want to do is create some packages to get us set up. So the first thing is entity for tracking what our table will look like, an event, gateway, repository, and the service. So this is going to be a lot simpler than the source microservice we were working on. Yeah, basically we're gonna start at the gateway and then work our way from there. So let's go ahead and create a new Java class called Pokemon Homing Processor. That configuration, all args constructor, and we're going to do some SLFJ for logging. We're going to be using a service called the Pokemon Homing Service. And I'm going to go ahead and get this class created inside of our service package. Make sure to annotate that with the service. I'm going to go back to the gateway. And basically, this is going to be similar to what we did with the source. And the method we use here, we're going to want to save this method because we're going to be putting it inside of our application YAML inside these bindings here. So create a bean, and then public. We're going to use those functions again from Java util function. And then we're going to get the new Pokemon event and homing Pokemon event. So basically we're going to be transforming it, right? We're going to get a new Pokemon event, and then we're going to transform it to a homing Pokemon event that we're going to send off to the consumer. So homing Pokemon process, and we are going to create these here. Let's see, so alt enter, create the class, and we're going to set it up in the event. And go back to the gateway. Let's make another event for the homing Pokemon event. And that's going to also go in the event package. All right. So let's go ahead and just create those events so we have them ready to go. The new Pokemon event is pretty much going to be similar to what we created earlier. We're going to change this to a record. And we're going to have a list of Pokemon details. Pokemon detail list, and we're going to create that Pokemon detail. And it's going to go in the event. This one's basically going to be the same as the Pokemon detail we made in the source one. So let me just go in there and put it to the side. Just let me confirm we got that. So yeah, it should be, everything should be the same. So I'm just going to copy this, put it in here just to make it easier. And then, yep, we got that. Gotta get a list. And then we are going to, in the homing Pokemon event, this is also going to be a record. And this is going to have, it's almost going to be the same as the other one, but it's going to have a different object. So Pokemon homing status and Pokemon homing status lists. I'm going to create a new class inside of the event package. So Pokemon homing status, and it's basically going to be nearly the same as our Pokemon details. So I'm just going to grab these annotations and post them in here. Basically everything's going to be the same. Oh shoot. One thing I just noticed is that I'm not going to be sending the IDs for both of these, so we'll just delete the ID. So inside of this Pokemon detail, we want to just delete the ID. We don't want to carry that with us. So inside of the source demo, make sure you remove the ID from there. And then Pokemon homing status, we're going to have a new enum. So I'm just going to go public enum homing status daycare or Pokebox. And we're going to add that here, private homing status, right? So I'll have that set up. And let's see here. Let me just make sure in this Pokemon detail we take out the ID. So it's not the same. So it's the same as the other one. Should be matching. Okay. And then the homing Pokemon. Yep. Everything should be good. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And make sure it looks good. So these are the events we're going to be processing. Homing status is going to have this new homing status ID and the homing processor. So that looks good. We're also going to be saving it to an entity on our table. So let's just go ahead and create a new entity. And it's going to call Pokemon again. And of course, this one's going to be similar to the entity we created earlier. So I'm going to put this side by side and just reuse some of this stuff just to keep it simple. Table name equals Pokemon processed. You're gonna know it's gonna get kind of repetitive, but yeah, just to keep it simple, just gonna reuse this stuff. This is just for demo purposes, so doesn't matter too much. And we want to remove this processing status, and we want to set a new one. Homing status. All right, so we're going to change the status. So it should look like that. We can close this one. So we got a new homing status. Basically everything carries over from before. And the homing status is going to be based off of the Pokemon homing status right here. Daycare or Pokebox. Okay. And now we need to fill out this processor. Okay, so what we are going to do is turn new Pokemon event function. Close that. And let's see. Set a new homing Pokemon event. And we're going to be using that Pokemon homing service, and we're going to create a method called homing Pokemon process. And we're going to send in the new Pokemon event. All right, let me make sure that looks good. Want to create a new method, so Alt-Enter. Create method, we'll come back to this to fill it out. But for now, we're just going to finish this up here. So I'm going to send a log info 1234 publishing Pokemon homing status 3. This is just going to let us see that the process is working the way we would expect it to. So homing Pokemon event, Pokemon homing status list dot size. Okay. So you'll notice a lot of these events are kind of similar, and you might want to have like a library that you import yourself to just have like a global variables or POJOs. But you know, I'm just making a quick tutorial. Okay, so homing Pokemon event, Pokemon homing status list. Is it empty? If it's empty, then we want to do null. Otherwise, we do homing Pokemon event. Yeah, we're going to just return a homing Pokemon event. I believe this has got to go here. This go here. Okay. So this is the function that we will be using inside of the processor. And basically, we'll get a new Pokemon event, run it through our service, save it into our database, and then convert it to the homing Pokemon event. And the homing Pokemon event is going to be picked up by our consumer to finally drop off the Pokemon into its final destination. So let's go into the service so we can fill out this homing Pokemon process. So the service is going to have a little bit of few things. Let's see here. So first we need a repo. So private Pokemon homing repository. We need to create that. It's an interface, so Alt Enter, create interface, and we're going to set it inside of our repository package. Okay. Pokemon repository extends JPA repository, and we're going to use that Pokemon entity we created, and the identifier is a long. Looks good. We want to annotate this with a repository. Let's make sure there are any other methods. So that should be everything we need for this repository. Let's go back to the service, and we're going to populate this method here. So it's going to have a lot of stuff in it, but yeah, we're just going to go through it. So list, Pokemon detail list. Let's import that list. And then it's going to be equal to new Pokemon event that we received from RabbitMQ. We're going to get the list of details. And then we're going to do the Pokemon homing status. Pokemon homing status list equals Pokemon detail list dot stream. Stream the list, and we're going to map it to our homing Pojo that we just created. Okay. Alright, so Pokemon homing status equals Pokemon homing status builder dot build. Same as before, bean utils, copy the properties, Pokemon detail, homing status. So we're going to copy everything as before. Log.info. Oh, I forgot to add some args. So we definitely need the all args constructor so we can inject this dependency and then add SLF for J for our logger. Pokemon detail plus Pokemon detail get total. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the Pokemon's total power and decide from there. Like if the total power is less than 400, we're going to send it to the daycare. And if it's over 400, we're going to say we don't need to put it in the daycare. We'll just put it in the Pokemon box. So if Pokemon detail get total is less than 400, like Bulbasaur, we're going to set the homing status to Pokemon homing status daycare. Yep. Otherwise, we're going to set the homing status of the Pokebox. Pokemon homing status dot Pokebox. Okay. This is supposed to be set. All right, that looks good. And then we're going to return the homing status. And we need to set it to a list. Okay, that looks good. Now we're going to create an event. Homing Pokemon event equals new homing Pokemon event, and we're going to set the homing status list. We're going to send that out. But before that, we want to save the Pokemon homing status. Nope, 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 nope. We want to get the list here. We want to save that list, but we're going to return the homing Pokemon event to our processor. So yeah, we're going to use this repository. We're going to create this method here. Okay, so we got a list of Pokemon homing statuses, and we're going to save them to the database. So we got a list of Pokemon list, Pokemon homing status list dot stream map, and we are going to save them. We're going to set the status, and then we're going to save all of them. All right. So we're going to create a new Pokemon entity. Equals new Pokemon. And then use the bean utils again to just copy the properties. So Pokemon homing status, and then we're going to copy it over to the entity. And then Pokemon set the homing status. So Pokemon homing status dot get homing status dot name. So what this is doing is it's getting the homing status, which is the enum, and we're just getting the name variable of that enum, and then we're going to return it. Okay, and then we also need to set this to list. And then finally, we're just going to log it out that we're saving it in, just so we can just see that for clarity. So saving Pokemon homing status, and then Pokemon homing repository save all. Save that list that we just created where we changed their status. Okay, so that should be everything. What we're going to do next is we're going to actually run this to make sure it works. All right, so first thing we want to do is we want to get the source running. So let's get that going. Let's scooch this to the side so we can see what it's logging. All right, so we got check for new Pokemon request. Also, I almost forgot, before we can do that, we need to set up this application YAML. Yeah, so we need this gateway. We need to grab this homing Pokemon process, and we need to set that up in our cloud bindings. So first thing we want to do is Pokemon in. So this is where we're getting it in from the source. And we destination is the Pokemon processing. So that's the exchange name that we set in the source from earlier. And then the group is the same group we set as before. Homing Pokemon. And then we want to send it out. So out to our consumer and we're going to send it to the destination Pokemon homing. This is also the exchange name, and the group is homing Pokemon. Okay, so that looks good. That should mean we're all good to go. So we got the source running and we have our processor. I'm going to go ahead and get the processor started up to see if it's good or if we have any issues. All right, so let's get this started up. Okay, so, oh no, now we got a problem here. So you see this often, B cannot be cast to Pokemon processor event, new Pokemon event. Yeah, it looks like it tried to pick up some messages. I'm gonna, I think it's because we had the old messages. I'm gonna stop these. I'm gonna stop these and clear out our queue real quick because I have the old ID. So as you can see here, if we went to the queue where it's processing, we saw that there's this ID here, but I deleted that earlier and it no longer exists. And we don't want that, so let me just make sure the queues are empty and we don't have anything going for us right now. Let's just check here. Pokemon processing. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and restart again and see if that issue persists. All right, let's go ahead and start up the source again. Okay, nothing to process. And then I want to go to the processor application. Let's make sure that error doesn't pop up. Okay. All right, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna test it out to see if it works. Let's go back to our endpoint here, and we got this Bulbasaur. So I'm gonna go ahead and execute this. We got this Pokemon reference number, and then let's check our logs to see if there's any. Okay, so it looks like everything was successful. It picked up the one Pokemon request, and then the processor, it also found that Pokemon. So we found the Pokemon total was 318, saving Pokemon homing status. And we published one status. So let's look at the database here. What was the table name? The table, process Pokemon DB, process Pokemon DB. I'm going to go to the table and find the table that we created, Pokemon process. Do a select on this. Okay, now we're gonna just run this quick select on this, see what we got. Yeah, so looks like it was successful. We can see that we picked up this Bulbasaur, and since its power was 318, we're sending it to the daycare. So in the final part of the consumer, we're going to be placing the Pokemon in the daycare or the box. What I'm going to do is try and do another test to see if we can send something to the Pokebox. So I'm just going to copy the properties from this CSV for, let's say, just Ivysaur. let's put an Ivysaur in our data. So copy this, name Ivysaur, grass, poison. The total is 405, HP of 60, attack of 62. You can pretty much just put whatever you want here. The main part we're testing is just like the total. Whatever else we have here doesn't really matter too much, but I'm just going to fill it out. So defense of 63, special attack of 80, special defense is also 80, and then also the speed is 60. Generation 1, it's not legendary. So let's go ahead and run that process. We got a reference number. And then let's look at the logs here. We're checking, it's looking to see if anything came through. And then it looks like we got another record process. That's for the Ivysaur. And then if we look at our processor, we can see that it found another Pokemon and the power was 405. So we set up another homing status for it. If I go back to Postgres, run this select statement again, we're going to see we got the Ivysaur and it was sent to the Pokebox. So far, so good. Okay, so now that we got the source and processor working correctly, we're going to do our final part, which is the consumer, and that's where we're actually going to be placing the Pokemon inside of the daycare or the Pokebox. So I will see you there.